What legal arguments justified Civil War secession? Imagine living in a time where states believed they had the right to leave a union they once agreed to join. That's the core of the legal debate during the American Civil War. The Southern states argued that the United States was formed through a voluntary agreement among sovereign states. They believed each state had the ultimate authority over its own affairs, including the right to withdraw from the Union if they felt it was no longer serving their interests. They pointed out that the Union was like a compact or contract, and if one party failed to keep its promises, the others could leave. They claimed that the North had broken this compact, especially over issues like slavery. For example, they cited the Fugitive Slave Clause, which required escaped slaves to be returned to their owners. Since the North refused to enforce this clause, the Southern states argued that the Union had failed its obligations, making secession a legal remedy. Southern legal thinkers also leaned on the 10th Amendment of the Constitution. This amendment states that powers not given to the federal government are reserved for the states. They used this to support their belief that states had the right to secede because the federal government was overstepping its bounds. They also invoked the idea of the right of revolution, which says that people or states can withdraw from a government that violates their fundamental rights. To them, secession was a last resort to protect their liberty and way of life. However, the Union and the Supreme Court strongly disagreed. They argued that the Constitution created a union that was meant to be permanent and indivisible. The court's decision in the case of Texas versus White in 1869 declared that secession was unconstitutional. They said that states could not leave the Union on their own because the Union was a perpetual entity. The court emphasized that acts of secession were legally invalid and that the Union was unbreakable. The Union also treated the Confederacy as an illegal rebellion, not a legitimate government. This legal stance influenced how the government responded during and after the war. In the end, the main legal arguments for secession were based on the idea that the Union was a voluntary compact, that the North had violated constitutional obligations especially regarding slavery, that the 10th Amendment supported state sovereignty, and that the right of revolution justified withdrawal. These points were challenged by the Union's view of an unbreakable union and the Supreme Court's ruling that secession was not legally allowed. This clash over legal interpretations was at the heart of the conflict that led to the Civil War.